My name is Lotta Tiselius and I work as an architect in the department Project Development in Vejle Kommune. My position is as an architect in the city architects department here in Vejle, and we work with architecture and urban planning in all different scales. We are now in the City Lab in the Kommune, and here we exhibit the development of architecture and urban planning in Vejle City and also in Vejle Kommune as a whole. And here behind me you can see an example of the walls that we use in City Lab to present ongoing and coming projects within architecture and urban planning in Vejle. For example, we here present the 4 different major development parts of Vejle City. We have the Fjord City or Fjordbyen, which is the number 1 here, the city part closest to the fjord. We have the Center City, the West City, and also a city part called New Rosborg. So we work with these 4 different city parts when we develop the city. I can go through the 4 different city parts really quick. The Fjord City, as I mentioned before, it's an old harbor area in Vejle, and this is very much a part of how we design the city part today. And the flood threat, which is a big threat in Vejle, is also a part of how we design the whole city. It's a complete transformation. There's still a huge industrial harbor that will be part of the part of the city, or of the city part. But there will also be new housing areas, recreational areas, restaurants and other harbor activities. And then we have the city center, and maybe you can see I have a brick here. And the red brick is very much a part of the city center of Vejle. The church and also the building that we're in right now is red brick, and this is very much an identity of the city center in Vejle. So we try to use this when we develop new buildings in the city center. For example, we are currently developing the City Hall Square, where we use very much the stones and the brick as a part of the development of this square. And then we have the West City, which is here, which is an old working area. The wool industry was a big part of how Vejle grew when it was back in the days, and so this is the old working class area. And in this area we have a lot of old working housing and also a transformation of the old factories into sort of creative studios and development studios for different creative fields in Vejle. And then we have New Rosborg, which is actually a completely new area in Vejle. It is located here. New Rosborg is actually the old compound in Vejle. And the recycling station and how we recycle all our trash will be moved to another part of Vejle. So this will be a completely empty area where we can develop a new part of the city. And that's the 4th part of Vejle. And then of course we have the rest of the kommune that we, parallel to all this, also develop. And the architectural expressions of Vejle is different in all of these city parts and also in the surrounding areas. But architecture and how we plan this, the city center of Vejle is very much important and something that we continually is developing both considering the flooding threat that is in Vejle. We have storm surges coming quite often in Vejle. So the city needs to be resilient both in its architecture and how we plan the city. So it's about elevating some of the buildings, and but in general making a city that is resilient and can handle storm surges. Also, we have some ongoing processes with our citizens in the commune, in the whole commune, where we work with how we engage the citizens in the city planning. We think that it's very important to engage all the citizens in the planning, so they can also contribute with their actions, but also their opinions in how their city should look like and how it should be. So that is a very important thing in Vejle, and we do that in something that we call the Lokalråd, which is a local group of people that is sort of our co-worker on how we develop the city. Resilience is a huge part of how we develop Vejle, and that is of course also really important in how we do our urban planning and how we plan our architecture. We are often threatened by flooding in Vejle, so we need to make a city planning that is resilient towards floods. We have a specific strategy for how we develop the city while also making it resilient towards flooding. So that is both to create a harbor area, as you can see down here, that is recreational for visitors, but also an area where the architecture is strong enough to stand against floods if there is coming some. So it's really a parallel run where the buildings have to be high enough that they don't get flooded, but that the connection with the water and the good living next to the water is still present. And in Vejle, we also constantly work on engaging our citizens in the development of the city and also the commune as a whole. And we do that during or through something that we call Lokalråd, which is a local advisory panel that works together with us on how to express the citizens' opinions, but also their views on how to develop the city. So that it's not only the politicians or only the commune, but also the active citizens throughout the city and throughout the whole commune that are participants in how to develop the city. So in Vejle we have a specific architecture policy, and together with our city architect, it is a very strong way of how we develop the architecture in the city. We have several quite specific buildings in Vejle that we're very proud of. We have the wave down at the fjord, which you can see here, which is actually shaped as a wave. And then we also have a new building called Fjordhus, like the fjord of the house, which is made of an artist, Olafur Eliasson. And both of these buildings and many of the other buildings in Vejle are shaped by the way how we think about architecture and the fact that we actually have an architecture policy and a city architect that sort of puts out a direction for how we develop the architecture of the city. And it's quite crucial actually, because if we don't have any opinions on how we develop the architecture, it will just be standard, you know? So I think that is also a big part of how we develop the city and the whole commune as a whole.